India has claimed that 20 members of its armed forces have been killed in a violent face-off with Chinese soldiers on the disputed Himalayan border, raising tensions in the already volatile region. The deaths are the first loss of life in the border area in at least 45 years. For more, South Asia correspondent James Oaten joins us now. Good morning, James. We've sort of been following this over the last day or two. It seemed to be increasing in seriousness. What's the latest?
Well, the situation has been increasing in seriousness for a few weeks now, and this recent deadly clash is actually at a moment when the two countries were meant to be de-escalating the situation. Yesterday, there were media reports that came from the Indian side that something big had happened on the border during this de-escalation process. Now, there's been plenty of reports in recent weeks about what has happened on the border, but this time the Indian government or the Indian Army actually started to confirm some details. At first, we were told that 3 people had been killed, 3 Indian Army soldiers had been killed, but overnight that number has risen to 20. With the Indian Army confirming that figure. From the Chinese side, the Chinese Foreign Ministry briefing at first, which was only being held in the early hours of this news breaking, China didn't actually confirm what had happened, so we're still yet to hear from the Chinese side about how many casualties there have been on their side of this clash. But Indian media is certainly reporting that there are casualties on both sides. One media outlet, NDTV, quite a reputable media outlet, is saying as many as 43 Chinese soldiers have been killed in this clash. Now, we know that there weren't gunshots fired during this skirmish. What it seems to have been is a fight that has broken out. People have used their fists, batons. There's been talk of iron rods being used. This is similar to what we've been hearing reports of in recently. But of course, as you mentioned before, what makes this quite distinctive to other previous reports is that there are fatalities here. People have died, and that hasn't happened since 1967.
And so what sparked this latest clash?
Well, over the years, there have been more and more kind of tensions on the border. The two countries went to war in 1962, and there is a border there that neither side actually agrees where the line is. And what you've had is soldiers on both sides kind of patrolling up into the point where they think the border should be, and you end up with the two armies meeting, and you have, particularly since the 90s, you had maybe 20 or 30 transgressions a year, as they call them. Now we're well over 200 transgressions every year. So certainly the conflict and the tension has been a lot more. Since May, we've been having reports of these fights that have been breaking out, and Chinese pushing forward, setting up tents closer to the border. Certainly the Indian Army has been responding as well, pushing closer to what they call the line of actual control. But as I mentioned earlier, the Indian Army has kind of been downplaying the issue, not really responding to the reports. There's been videos that have been released online showing rock fights or showing fist fights between the two forces, but India has constantly denied reports of violence. It has also said that these videos that have been released in around May are unauthenticated, which is a strange way of neither confirming nor denying what is happening. Those videos and these conflicting media reports prompted the two sides to meet and start holding high-level talks, and that's where this process of de-escalation started, but clearly something has gone very wrong.
And so over the next couple of days, how do you see it panning out? I mean, how do you take the heat out of the situation right now?
Well, that's obviously the biggest question now. Clearly, armed conflict is something that no one here wants. And so there's a lot of heat in this situation. So I'll have to go back to the talks to try and work out what has happened. One of the issues is over the recent weeks from the Indian side is a lot of narration about China being more and more assertive, and that India hasn't been quite matching their assertiveness. And there's even arguments about whether or not China has actually now literally lost some territory as a result of this. Now, as I mentioned, this zone is very grey. There's no clear line there, but a lot of people are fearing now from the Indian perspective that they have lost some ground and they simply won't be able to get that back. I spoke to one professor expert in China studies who's spoken a little bit more about that. That's Professor Srikanth Kondapalli from JNU. Let's have a listen.
In 1967, we had a few casualties in Nathula, Jelepla, and Chola areas in Sikkim region. After that, we have not seen any major skirmish. In 1975, again, there were a few incidents, but not to the level that we are now witnessing, which means that if there is retaliation from either side, this could lead to a limited local war between the two sides.
Clearly a very fluid, volatile situation. We'll be keeping across it. James Oaten, thank you.